Hey everyone, welcome to the Weekly Movie Minute. I am Joe from Create Context, and this week we are talking about the movie Ash. Ash is the new horror sci-fi film from director Flying Lotus, and it has all the makings of a great mystery thriller. We have an interesting setting, a cool group of characters, and a charismatic lead actress propelling the story forward. Combine this with the style and music from Flying Lotus, and Ash should be a slam dunk. Unfortunately, Ash feels like a whisper of the greater movies that have come before it than an all-around new masterpiece. Ash begins with Rhea, played by Eliza Gonzalez, waking up on a distant planet with her entire crew dead. She doesn't know who or what killed them, and she's haunted by strange visions as she stumbles around the space station House of Horrors. It's an interesting premise that gets more fleshed out when we are quickly introduced to Brian, played by Aaron Paul. Brian and Rhea work together to try and solve this mystery while learning the truth about the alien planet where they reside. As soon as the film begins, it's easy to see Ash is brimming with style. Musician turned director Flying Lotus has bathed this film in neon reds and purples that look great on screen. The soundtrack, produced by Lotus himself, is also exceptional. It's a strong techno beat influenced score that sounds a little bit like Daft Punk meets a Trent Reznor score. The music is great on its own, but there were times when the tempo and beat didn't exactly match what was happening on screen. Right away, though, it's easy to see influences from all over film, TV, and even video games within Ash. An abandoned space station being traversed by a lone survivor, it's nothing new. But Ash aims to bring something original with its interesting art and sound. It's a technique that almost works, but fails because of the slow burn narrative and lack of an interesting finale. Ash's runtime is barely over an hour and a half, but it still feels painfully long, waiting for any sort of meaningful plot beat to happen. Most of the first and second acts are just Rhea being scared and remembering tiny bits of information before the space station turned into a butcher shop. None of it is very compelling, though, and it makes the mystery feel secondary to the cool sounds and lights. Both Gonzalez and Paul are doing a fine job in their roles. It's just that their roles aren't too complicated. Their entire arc is just them being scared and having no idea what's going on. Neither do we as the audience, and without any character having some knowledge and grounding us, the film kind of flounders in its first hour. Ash takes a lot of inspiration from much better films, and that might be one of its biggest drawbacks. There's a scene towards the beginning of the movie showing the entire space station staff eating around a cafeteria table. It's eerily similar to the opening scene in Alien, where we get to introduce ourselves to all of these characters, but instead of feeling like a cool homage, it just kind of reminds us how much better that movie was. There are also allusions to The Thing, Annihilation, and even video games like Dead Space. Living up to some of these classic films is an impossible task, but when the film is constantly making you think of those masterpieces, it's hard to not draw the comparison. Thankfully, though, the film does finally start to pick up steam in the third act. Ash has a lot of build up to its finality, and for the most part, it delivers. There are some fantastic payoffs to interesting ideas laid before, and a few red herrings that are all kind of tied up nicely. There are also some out of left field reveals that feel inconsequential to the plot, mainly one. It's hard to see that one coming, but that's just because there are so many other ideas that Ash is playing with that this one out of left field one feels a bit like an afterthought. The final act is great, mainly because we get to see what's been teased throughout the film. There are hints and whispers of a bigger threat throughout, and when it finally comes full circle, it's satisfying. The issue is it takes too long to get there, and it's followed up by another reveal that doesn't land as hard. Ash is a fine movie, all things considered. I love the bold choices Lotus made with his feature-length debut, and it's clear the director has some serious talent. The biggest issue I had with the film is the pacing and the script. Ash hinges on this mystery flashback-driven narrative. It's a standard trope, starting with the aftermath and working through flashbacks to peel back the story. The problem is that Ash doesn't benefit from this narrative. The reveals are all backloaded, so the first two acts just feel like an overly long introduction to the action and reveal. This film may have benefited from a more straightforward narrative. Instead of everything cool all happening in the last 30 minutes, we could have had an hour and a half where every 20, 30 minutes something neat happens and we learn a little bit more about the story. The themes and ideas they are trying to get across would all be just as strong if that would have been the narrative, and we wouldn't be left with this overly long intro. As it stands, though, Ash is a pretty good debut, and I'm excited to see what this director will do next with maybe a cleaner script. If you like Ash and you're looking for something similar, I have some recommendations. First, I check out Alien, Ridley Scott's masterpiece from 1979. This is my favorite film in that franchise, and movie for movie, this might be my favorite film franchise. It's astoundingly good. The way Scott is able to use space and lighting to create fear and tension, it's a true masterpiece, and one that Ash is clearly drawing a lot of inspiration from. Next, I check out Annihilation. This is a 2018 film from Alex Garland based on the book from Jeff Vandermeer. The book is a lot more opaque than the film, but the film itself is also pretty trippy. It's about a group of scientists led by Natalie Portman who were sent to visit a strange geological occurrence. It uses a similar narrative following Portman after her return and showing us everything that happened during the expedition through flashbacks. Only the majority of this movie takes place during the flashbacks. It's a strange movie, but a really great one. Lastly, I check out a smaller one, a movie called Coherence. This is a 2013 film from James Yark Beekert, made on a minuscule budget, but with a fantastic script. Truly, this is one of my favorite stories in sci-fi films. It follows a group of people at a dinner party during this once-in-a-lifetime comet flyby. This occurrence leads to a power outage, and a lot of strange things start happening inside the house and around the neighborhood. I don't want to spoil anything. I think you should go in blind. It's a pretty short movie, but it is absolutely worth your time. It's a fascinating film, and in many ways, the opposite of Ash. It's a sci-fi story, sure, but it's led almost entirely by dialogue and the script, where Ash leans so hard into its cool aesthetics and visual style. Thank you guys so much for hanging out at the Weekly Movie Minute. We'll be back next week looking at Death of a Unicorn. If you like this or want to see more of that, please give us a subscribe. That would be super cool, and I'll see you next time.